A blessed Sunday. Welcome to His Life Ministries, where imperfect people are perfectly welcome. Of course, our vision is to glorify God and make disciples. That is still our highest pursuit. I would love to begin officially the sermon today on a technical way, and please allow me to be technical, because it's important for us to understand how serious sin is and its harmful effect to humanity. 2 Corinthians chapter 5 verse 21. God made him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. This is such a beautiful passage written by the Apostle Paul, and this one verse tells us of that divine exchange. The righteousness of God was imputed upon us in exchange that Jesus Christ took our sinful nature. And because Jesus Christ embraced our sinful nature, the wrath of God was upon him. This is very beautiful because it gives us the courage to stay humble. Christian faith is and will always be about the grace of the Lord. This is beautiful because it also reminds us of our greatest problem. We say our greatest problem is corruption. Yes, I am not undermining the harmful effect of corruption. Maybe we say our greatest problem is immorality. Yes, we have to take seriously immorality. But in Christian context, our greatest problem is sin. And when sin entered the world, it distorts God's perfect design. First, when sin entered the world, it distorts our understanding of who God is. Because of this sin, there's a separation between the holy God and us, sinful in nature. Worst, because of sin, our understanding of God is clouded. And since our understanding of God is clouded, it's hard for us somehow to worship Him authentically. It's difficult for us to worship Him wholeheartedly. Because our perception of God is clouded, we cannot understand sometimes, if not most of the time, to appreciate the ways of God. And because our perception of God is clouded without His goodness, we question His faithfulness. On a personal note, when sin entered the world, it distorts our understanding of who we are. Our sense of identity is confused to the point that it affects our misplaced priorities and misguided priorities. Hence, God came, fulfilled His promise in order for us to be set free from this wrong perception. Generally speaking, we say God came to save us from sin. Yes, God came, Jesus Christ came to save us from sin. But specifically, we can appreciate the salvation that God offers to humanity. He saved us from our sin. He saved us from guilt. He saved us from condemnation. He saved us from our struggle. He saved us from our weaknesses. He saved us from anxiety. For that reason, my friend, the essence of our July to August series has something to do with the freedom that God offers. Freedom from the darkness within. He came to save us, and we rejoice in the salvation He offers. He came to set us free. The desire of God is not for us all to live differently. He desires that we will live freely, not controlled by guilt, not controlled by shame, not defined by our past, not even defined by our greatest fear. He wants us to live freely. Freedom from the darkness within. And this reminds us, my friend, that our greatest battle is not fought from the outside. The greatest battle is fought within. And we say it, our trigger points, our struggle, but God calls it sin. And every time God exposes the darkness within, His intention is not to condemn us. Every time the Lord exposes the darkness within, He desires to set us free. Taken from the 7 deadly sins, and this afternoon, my focus is on purity. And this one is tough. Tough because for us living in the postmodern society, the topic on purity is outdated. Difficult because other people are not comfortable talking about purity. Because maybe they are struggling with in this area, or maybe they carry guilt, shame, and condemnation. However, we have to embrace the importance of this topic, reclaiming purity. Because not only God's perfect design was distorted when sin entered the world, because we live in a broken society, purity is somehow destroyed, distorted, and we need to reclaim the purity according to God's perspective. Most of the time when we talk about purity, it is addressed to men. Because biologically speaking, we men are designed to appreciate visual. Physiologically speaking, the libido content of men are higher compared to that of the women. But then, since the world is getting dark and darker, so even the women are struggling in this area. Also, when we talk about purity, we address it directly to the youth, to the younger generations, challenging them to pursue purity, challenging them to walk in purity. But friends, my goal this afternoon is twofold. For younger generation to understand the essence of purity, and sadly, I don't belong in that age bracket. And for the older generation to understand our role in reclaiming the purity. Our verse this afternoon is taken from the book of Matthew, chapter 5, verses 27 to 30. This is part of Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. So medyo malawig-lawig ni ang sermon ni Jesus. Kaya nag-end pa ni sa Matthew chapter 8. Pagpanaog ya, kag may isa ka man with leprosy who ran up to hit towards him and said, "If you are willing, please, made me clean." So tama kalawig. So kadamo sa gintudlo ni Jesus Christ. Here in verse 27, you have heard that it was said, "Do not commit adultery." But I tell you, everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. Matthew 25, verses 27 to 30. You have heard that it was said, "Do not commit adultery." But I tell you. Friends, when Jesus Christ said, "You have heard," that is an important point. Jesus was not teaching them a new lesson. You have heard. It means Jesus recognized the truth that since they are part of Jewish community and Jewish culture, they are fully aware about the law given to them. And so Jesus was not contradicting the lesson being taught to them years back. Jesus was not introducing a new lesson. He was just telling them what they already knew. So it's also important for us then to realize that Jesus came not to abolish the law. He came to fulfill the law. Remember, Jesus was the personification of the law. The law was talking about him. But when Jesus said, "But I tell you," this is the twist. When Jesus Christ said, "But I tell you," then he leads them to a deeper sense. You have heard this, but I tell you. That means, my friend, that Jesus here was introducing the real essence of understanding the law. Not just you understand the law, not just you master the law, but you apply the law. Also, it's important for us to note that for Jewish leaders, for the Jewish religious leaders, what matters most is the outside appearance. And so they try their best, the very best, to look good from the outside. They master the law, they study the law, they master the law. Because for them, what matters most is from the outside. And you know what, friends? If we ponder, years have passed, but nothing have changed. Even us, living in this postmodern society, we always value what is seen from the outside. That's why we work hard to look good from the outside. Because society values what is visible. Years have passed, but nothing has changed. We still value what is seen from the outside. And most of the time, we are victimized of this mindset. We look good from the outside, but something bad is going on within. We try to look strong from the outside, but deep within we are struggling with anxiety. We try to compose ourselves, but within we are fighting against fear. Now, going directly to the message of Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 to 30 on purity, ano na gani siling nila? Nasa loob ang kulok. So this is the essence of Jesus' words. And I have to share with you 3 ways on how we can reclaim purity based on this passage, and 3 practical ways, 3 areas that we have to watch out. The first point is found in verses 27 to 28. You have heard that it was said, do not commit adultery. But I tell you, everyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart. The first thing that we need to understand as we desire to reclaim purity, because the world is getting dark and darker, then we need to guard our hearts. The Bible is consistent. Jesus is consistent. Sin begins within. And so if we desire to reclaim purity, not only because we are protecting our reputation, but because we desire to live a life that gives God the glory, this is the first thing that we need to do. We need to guard our hearts. Friends, the point of this passage is not about it's a sin to admire. Of course, we have to admire. But the point of this passage is we cultivate lustful desires. And this is why lust, as one of the 7 deadly sins, is dangerous. Because instead of seeing that person as someone who deserves to be respected, instead of seeing that person as someone who deserves, who has dignity, lust sees that person as an object to gratify sinful and sexual desires. One glance, it's okay. Second glance, to make it sure, okay lang. Third glance, it's quite questionable. Pero kung ara ka sa Cebu, dapat kabalo ka gid magtulo kung sinong tupad mo. I went there last week, attended a conference or a leadership convention. I was with one of the young people that I am training. Kagingambalan ko sa. Kuwari ka di sa Cebu to, amo na ako iingon sa imo ha. Sa Cebu, daghanag mistisa oy. Na makita mo mga mistisa, makaingon ka gid sana all. Daghanang mistisa sa Cebu, pero uban na ay bukol sa liog. Daghanang mistisa sa Cebu, imurag Angelina Jolie ba? Makaingon ka sana all. Pero maghambal, murag Kenny Rogers. Seriously speaking, the first step is us guiding our hearts. And this opens our understanding, my friends, brothers and sisters in the faith, that this sin, lust, as part of the 7 deadly sins, it's and will always be a heart issue. Every sin is dangerous. Every sin is harmful. Every sin distorts God's perfect design. And this sin, it distorts God's design for love and relationship. The words of Jesus Christ is very clear. If you look at the woman lustfully, you already committed adultery with her in your heart. And that opens our understanding, my friends, of this pattern. It always begins here. It always begins as a thought. And once uncontrolled, unmanaged, it will dictate our desire. And since our desire is misguided, we fail to control our desire, it will affect our choices. And since we are not careful with our choices, that will shape who we are. The Bible is consistent. Jesus is consistent. It begins within. If uncontrolled, unmanaged, it will manifest in actions. It affects how we view other people. And so, the second point is found in verses 29 to 30. Please take note the strong words used by Jesus himself. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Self-harm ni? Ano masaka ta sa langit nga bulag? Ano masaka ta sa langit nga utod aton mga kamot? Ano ni nga PWD tam? No offense meant? No. Jesus Christ here was not teaching about self-harm. This is an exaggeration, emphasizing important point in purity. For the Jewish mindset, right eye, right hand, important. So friends, the point of this passage is this. We desire to reclaim purity, then we need to address sin seriously. We have to understand how serious sin is, and we have to address that sin seriously. Therefore, my friend, the point of that passage, the point of Jesus is very simple. If that thing causes us to sin, cut it off. If that habit causes us to sin, cut it off. If that friendship causes us to sin, cut it off. If that negotiation, if that business partnership, though it promises a multi-million transaction, if it causes us to sin, cut it off. If that habit causes us to sin, cut it off. Therefore, my friends, when Jesus Christ states these words, the passage then is telling us all, no matter how valuable it is, but if it is causing us to sin, cut it off. Because we cannot treat destructive pattern casually. If we treat destructive pattern casually, it will eventually control us. If we treat destructive pattern casually, it will eventually master us to the point that we cannot get out from that maze, from that problem, to the point that it's hard for us to get out from that complicated situation. There was a point where public figures were arguing because one made a proposal to change the final line of the Philippine national song, "Ang mamatay ng dahil sa iyo." To cut it short, it was not changed. Still, we are singing that line, "Ang mamatay ng dahil sa iyo." That single line alone, my friend, is very powerful because that reminds us freedom is costly. And if we desire to be free, yes, God wants us to be free, but we have to do our part. We have to be wise. We have to grow in discernment in order for us to identify things that we need to cut off. Friends, the enemy will not give us something that is quite obvious. Ang ihatag sang enemy sa aton permi, inabalang kanami, sugar-coated. Kay, ang sala, daw credit card malang na. Enjoy now, pay later. Nothing is too valuable to surrender if that thing draws us away from God. I understand, upod ka mo dako, childhood friendship mo na, upod ka mo sa tanan nga struggle sa kabuhi, sa journey, pero if that friendship causes us to be away from the Lord, it's better to end that friendship. I understand your desire for your business to be stable, and here you are, a business proposal, a business partnership is presented before you. But if you know that business partnership requires you to compromise, and then your faith will be destroyed, cut it off. That is the essence of Jesus. The words of Jesus are strong enough to allow us to check our hearts. But then, the third point, opens our understanding. We need to reclaim purity by guarding our hearts. We need to reclaim purity by taking sin seriously. The last part of verse 30, for it is better that you lose one of the parts of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. Friends, this part then, this is now the third and the last point, is reminding us all that in order for us to reclaim purity, we need to understand or to remember what matters most. Every sin gives us a false promise, but in the end, it leaves us being destroyed, distracted. Last gives us a promise, enjoy. Temporary enjoyment. Ano ba siling nila? Para at least kung magtigulang ka, bala may hambal ka man? Para bala mahambal ka man? Uy, nakatilaw ka na. Para hindi ka man bala mag-innocentity. Amo na ginaba, try bala, sus, para may experience ka. Ano, wala man may madula sa imo, That's normal. But here, Jesus is telling us all that for every decision we make, about to make in our life, we need to weigh our decision through the lens of eternity. And at times, my friend, the Lord is telling us all to let go of something that is so valuable. Wala man, ang essence bisang surrender, hindi na tumabatsagan nga nag-surrender gid kita kung yung surrender naton hindi tama ka importante sa aton. Mabatsagan naton nga nag-surrender gid kita kung ang ging surrender naton tama ka importante sa aton. But if we weigh our choices, our options in life through the lens of eternity, then we will be reminded and be comforted. Temporary sacrifice is worthwhile if it leads us to be closer to God. The world is filled with instant coffee, instant noodles. And the world will also tempt us to embrace immediate gratification. But if we understand purity in the context of the Lord Jesus Christ, every decision will be measured by this question. Will it honor the Lord or not? Will it give God the glory or not? Reclaiming purity is our topic as we walk through the 7 deadly sins, and one of which is lust. And when we say pursuing purity from our human's point of view, we sometimes say it's about us avoiding negative actions. Or maybe when we say pursuing purity, we say it's about us avoiding sinful acts. Of course, that's part of it. When we say pursuing purity, I pursue purity because I have a name to protect. I have a marriage to protect. I have a family to protect. I am protecting my reputation and integrity. But then again, Jesus Christ goes further. Pursuing purity in the context of Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 to 30, goes beyond avoiding negative consequence. It means we honor the Lord. We live in such a way that honors God because we are preparing for His return. It changes everything, my friend, when we understand and when we are convinced wholeheartedly that Jesus is coming soon. That will be our motivation for righteousness, our motivation to do right, not because we want to be saved, but because we want to honor the Lord. Going back to our verse, this is heavy. It takes serious action on our end. The words of Jesus Christ in this passage is heavy. Because all of us, every person, has fallen short of God's standard. The message of God, without minimizing its original intent, is heavy for us in living in this postmodern society because every person has fallen short of this standard. Everyone struggle with purity. Everyone are fighting hard not to be consumed by immorality. Every one of us has fallen to God's standard. And if we are honest enough, there are times that we give in, we cave in, and there are times nga sinuko natin ang bataan. But the grace of God offers a different story. Yes, none of us is perfect. Every person has fallen short. But God offers grace. In the grace of God, purity can be reclaimed. In the grace of God, broken lives can be mended. In the grace of God, we can live a life that honors Him. And so, this is where I will leave you the 3 practical steps. 3 areas that we need to watch, that we need to guard as we aim to reclaim purity. The first point, practical application then, watch it. Guard your eyes. Kaysa prangka nga istorya abyan, kung anong makita naton, pwede nga ma-appreciate naton. Kung anong makita naton sa iban, pwede nga masuya kita sa ila. Kung ano ang makita naton, pwede makapainit sa aton tagipusoon. And so this is the first point. We need to watch it. We need to guard our eyes. We need to be careful with what we watch. If in the past, the message on sexuality, immorality are somehow hidden, now the message of immorality and impurity in this postmodern society is quite obvious. Nabala ang gina-endorse ya, century 2 na, pero ang model nakabikini. We need to guard the gates of our soul, the eyes. Again, everything we see affects our thoughts, our desire, our choices, our relationship. Second area that we need to guard as we desire to reclaim purity. Not only we have to watch it, to guard our eyes, then we need to stop it. We need to guard also our thoughts. If every day we see things that can either stimulate genuine success or genuine joy because someone else is successful, if every day our eyes are exposed to different factors causing us to sin, quote unquote, daily, we are also entertaining thoughts that are not from the Lord. Allow me to be vulgar, ha? Even just for today. Kaysa tuod lang nga istorya abyan, sa aton paminsaron, damo na taging buyayaw. Allow mo to be bold just for this segment. Kaysa tuod lang nga istorya, sa aton paminsaron, damo na taging patay. Allow me to be frank just for this segment. Kaysa tuod lang nga istorya abyan, sa aton paminsaron, damo na taging ubahan. And so, we need to guard our thoughts. Kay perdi pabala sa malahalon nga kamera ang aton nga thoughts, very HD gina saya, klaro-klaro. Not every thought deserves our attention. If we discern that this thought is not from the Lord, then we need to replace it with the things of God. Think of what is pure, excellent, trustworthy. Think of those things. 3 areas that we need to guard as we desire to reclaim purity in this broken society. Guard your eyes, guard your thoughts, and third and finally, leave it. Guard your steps. Kay kabalo ka lang gidbala abyan nga ginayawa-yawa ka sang imo nga tupad pero hindi namong tupad mo subong, ha? Kabalo ka lang gid nga ginayawa-yawa ka na sang imong amigo, sang ibang imong amiga, upod-upod ka man Japon. Ay gusto ko sa i-win kay Jesus gani man, pero kabalo ka lang gid nga kalad ka rin, kabala isa lang ka kalad ka upod ka man. When I say live it, it requires intentionality, it requires courage to say stop. It's over. Kabalo ka lang gid nga amuni nga mga bagay ang makaduso sa imo nga makasala kapag gid. Sometimes this means ending up that conversation, ending up that friendship, ending up that habit. The talk about purity is sensitive, but we have to. That includes myself. Friends, this is where I will end. I'll be asking you 2 questions to ponder. If we go back to our main verse, Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 to 30, it opens our understanding then that for Jesus, the call towards purity, it is more than actions. God is calling us to pursue purity, and in the teaching of Jesus Christ in this book, it's about the conditions of our hearts. Ano na gana ginakanta? Di ba sa una bala nga Maginoo pero medyo bastos? Because we can be decent from the outside, respected from the outside, kagalang-galang from the outside, pero Maginoo pero medyo bastos. And we say, it's okay to be that. Men will be men after all. And they say, it's okay to be that. It's hidden, by the way. But in this series, we are reminded, God sees the heart. This is the condition of our hearts. Friends, the challenge of this passage is powerful. If everything begins within, if sin begins in the heart, if it begins here, and so Matthew chapter 5 is telling us all, before it becomes visible, deal that sin immediately. Before it becomes loud, before it turns out into action, before it causes you to act and to commit something that in the first place you should not commit. Matthew chapter 5 is telling us all, don't wait until that sin becomes obvious, becomes visible before you deal with it. Because if this is us, we deal the sin because now it's obvious. Of course, God is gracious. We can still be forgiven by Him, but reputation has already been damaged. Purity has also already been destroyed. Your reputation has already been damaged. This is the challenge of Matthew chapter 5. Antes maglupok, i-deal natin. If sin begins here, then it has to end here. If that desire begins here, then it has to end here. And these are now the 2 questions that I would love to ask you. Get ready, older generations, because I have a greater challenge for you today. Taking into consideration Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 to 30, there are 2 questions, 2 sets of questions that we need to ask. Sometimes we ask, what is wrong with the road? Friends, wake up. The road will be darker. The world will be worse before it gets better. It's settled. The world is already dark. It's settled. The world is already immoral. It's settled. The society is already broken. Instead of asking this question, what is world? What is wrong with the world? We need to ask ourselves, what have I allowed to become normal in me? And this is now the challenge for the older generation. Because the profound question talking about reclaiming purity, we should not ask ourselves, though the first question is important, what am I doing? But the most important question we should ask ourselves, who am I becoming? And what example am I setting for the next generation? We reclaim purity not because we want to protect our reputation. We are reclaiming purity because we are thinking about the next generation. We are fighting hard, guarding ourselves, guarding our hearts against purity because, of course, we are protecting our name. But the most important thing to consider, my friend, is we need to think of the next generation. Here's the challenge. what we permit privately today can become a pattern the next generation considers normal tomorrow. What are we showing them? His life ministries values the next generation. That is one of our core values. That's why we disciple the youth. But hey, what we allow in private, what we permit in private can become a pattern. If we are showing the younger generation, if we are showing them it's okay to be together and do some acrobatics at night outside marriage, it's okay nga mag-upod ka mo, bisan wala ka mo nakasal, basta naghigugmaanay ka mo. And it will become normal tomorrow. Then marriage, the blessing of marriage, God's design will be distorted. If we are showing the next generation that it's okay to have affairs, as long as you can provide, then we are showing and telling the next generation it's okay to have affairs as long. What is that important tagline during our time? Sa mata ng bata, ang mali ay nagiging tama. I just realized it by now. It has spiritual implication. What we are showing today, if we are showing the younger generation that it's okay to paibigin mo siya, pakiligin mo siya, iwanan mong luwaan, and so we are showing the younger generation it's okay, perfectly fine to play with someone else's emotions. So younger generations, what are we showing the older generation, what are we showing to the younger generation? This time, it moves from me guarding myself, protecting my steps, guarding my thoughts, to I am guarding my heart, I am protecting my thoughts, I am reclaiming purity for the sake of my children, for the sake of the younger generation, for the sake of the generations to come. Earlier at the North, I commend the couple. Balamong North daan sa His Life North, ang congregation, pamilya, ang pastor single. Diba the best? But seriously speaking, I commend the couple at the North. And I said to them, keep on. Because as you celebrate your 25 years together, your 30 years together, you are telling us, in this broken and fallen society, it's possible to be committed. It is not, what am I doing? It's about what example I am leaving behind. Friends, we cannot reclaim purity in the next generation if we refuse to confront the compromise of the day. Reclaiming purity because purity has been destroyed, has been damaged, has been distorted by the enemy. We reclaim purity for the sake of the next generation. Of course, all of us, and you will agree that you are praying for a better Philippines. All of us are praying and aiming for a better society. But if we will not confront the compromise of today to see a better society, it's quite difficult, impossible maybe. And so friends, I am talking to the older generation, to the titas and titos, that includes me. We have to confront the compromise of today. Gusto gid naton ng next generation, mga kapuhan kay mga bata naton, mga buhi sa society nga ang immorality is normal. Older generation, would you love to see a younger generation, the next generation, the generation to come nga ang maabtan nila nga society? Okay lang ang may kirida ka, kirido ka. Okay lang hindi perfect ang guba ang okay lang ibaligya mo imudungog for the sake of your dream. If we refuse to confront the compromise of today, that will destroy the next generation. But friends, I will end on a positive note. The purity we reclaim today may protect the next generation we leave behind. As we stand and protect purity, as we stand and pursue purity, as we stand and aim for purity, that declaration, that fight of ours will protect the next generation. And so the next generation will live in a society where faith is honored, Christ is glorified. Friends, I pray that you will live a pure faith. I pray that your legacy is a legacy of love. I pray that your legacy will be a legacy of commitment. I pray that you will live a pure faith so that the next generation will understand in this broken and fallen society, it's possible to honor the Lord. May you walk with humility, asking God for direction. May you pursue things that the name of the Lord be glorified. As we all pursue purity, I pray that we will humble ourselves before the Lord, because on our own, it would be difficult for us. And may our gracious God sanctify your hearts, your mind, your body. And I pray that our priority in life will always be the glory of the Lord. May God bless you all.